Welcome to a special Monday edition of This Week in Racing. It's been a busy weekend in racing, so we've got a ton of stuff to talk about, including two major race wins that were taken away over the weekend. And wins is unfortunately an ironic part of the discussion. We're also going to be talking about Le Mans Hypercars and a potential IndyCar video game. So let's get to it. So news that broke mere minutes before I hit the record button. The wins Ford GT and GTE-AM of Keating Motorsports has been stripped of their Le Mans win and demoted to second place in the GTE-AM division for fuel penalty issues. The fuel flow was a little too fast on their Ford GT, so they were demoted an ironic amount of time that was just enough of a penalty to put them into second place in the race, giving the GTE-AM win to Porsche. Now this comes on the heels of the Canadian Grand Prix last weekend, in which Sebastien Vettel was the first car across the line, but was given a time penalty during the race, which demoted him to second place. And also, during the weekend, Ross Chastain lost a win in the Iowa Speedway truck race over a ride height issue. It seems a bit of an epidemic right now in the world of motorsports that wins are being taken away from the cars that cross the finish line first. In fact, I may have to expand on this in a video later this week. Goodyear announced a surprise return to World Motorsport in the World Endurance Championship. They will be debuting in the LMP2 class, taking over from their I guess you could say brother in tire competition, Dunlop, which they own. They will be supplying the tires for Joda Sport and Jackie Chan Racing, both of their Oricas in the LMP2 class, and there's a possibility that Goodyear will be developing a GTE tire for use in the coming years. So it's kind of interesting to see Goodyear finally returning to a series that isn't named NASCAR or the NHRA. Nationwide is ending its NASCAR sponsorship, according to Adam Stern. They are using an early contract out to leave Alex Bowman at the Hendrick Motorsports team. Now this comes on the heels of a possible announcement that a team will be leaving NASCAR. Now obviously it's not connected to Hendrick Motorsports. I would imagine that Hendrick Motorsports will probably be around till the day NASCAR dies, which doesn't seem to be anytime soon. But this, again, shows a bit of sponsorship concerns as the sport kind of right-sizes itself. How many cars will be on the grid next year? There's been some speculation that there could be less than 35 full-time cars. We'll just have to see how it all turns out as the months progress. Another one of the big stories to break over the weekend was the announcement of the Hypercar regulations. Finally, they've been in development for what seems like forever. They've been in development hell, I guess would be fair to say, but we finally have some rules. They will be 750 horsepower and 1,100 kilograms with a target lap time, a minimum of 3 minutes 30 around Le Mans. Now, to give you some idea of how fast that is, the current LMP1 cars during qualifying lap the circuit in around 3 minutes 16 for the pole position. The class will have spec tires, spec fuel, and balance of performance. You can build either a purpose-built prototype or a car based on a road car, a true GT, if you will. The balance of the performance will be something to look for. Whether or not it becomes a problem, it may well end up becoming a problem, as we've seen recently with the GTE-AM and the Keating car losing its win over it. But there has been quite a few commitments, Aston Martin being the most prominent of those that are not currently involved in prototype racing. They will be running a V12 GT car in the Hypercar regulations. Toyota will be building a prototype, as well as Scuderia Glickenhaus, an American manufacturer, as well as Baikalas, making commitments to the series in the early stages, which of course is, well, it's about in line with what we've seen, or what we see currently in what is currently the top class LMP1 about the same amount of manufacturers. I suppose if you count it up, there's 4 right now in LMP1, and it looks like there's going to be 4 for the 2020-2021 season of the World Endurance Championship. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, there's a couple things that obviously I'm a little bit, as a purist, not too happy about. The spec tires, the spec fuel, especially in recent years, it seems like Le Mans has been on the cutting edge of new technology. I know tires generally aren't new technology, so I suppose you can make the argument that that's not as important. But fuel, it's kind of weird to see that become spec, especially when we've kind of come into this era of having so many different options, if you will. I mean, a couple of years ago, there was isobutanol being tested. Obviously, we've seen hydrogen cars be attempting to be built for the Garage 56. I guess it would have been Garage 63 this year at Le Mans. The space for a true prototype car that's different than anything else on the track. So it's weird to see them go to spec fuel, but I guess it's all about cost savings. This seems to be, kind of as a whole, hypercars have been kind of the, like, we need to cost save, we need to cost save, we need to cost save. One of the things that makes me a little bit nervous, because they are also allowing hybrids. This is kind of the weird thing. We've talked so much about, or so much of the talk around this, like I said, is cost savings. Toyota's going to be running a hybrid once again. So the balance of performance is going to be very strange because Aston is running a completely non-hybrid V12. We have no idea yet what Glickenhaus will run or Bike-Hollis or whoever else will build a car for this formula. The balance of performance could get really wacky really quick because in like GTE, sure, you've got cars like the Big Chungus BMW and the Corvette and some of the older cars like the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, which ran its last race at Le Mans. But ultimately, those are all GT cars. And you would think, well, at least up until the Ford GT came around, that most of those cars, people know how to balance GT cars. Will they know how to balance prototypes, specifically prototypes that are all being built very differently? Even GT prototypes, kind of, a lot of people have thrown out the GT1 comparison in the 90s. And I have to tell you guys that didn't work out very well. It was awesome for 2 or 3 years, and then it became essentially just, well, it's prototypes again. So I don't know how this is going to go. I know a lot of people, especially, again, the BOP issue. So I guess I'll just say it right now. I think it's going to be a disaster. I think most of the races are going to be decided in a boardroom, as we've kind of seen with the GT cars, especially this year, where the pole-sitting Aston Martin was hit with a BOP adjustment right before the race, and they fell immediately to the back, and both cars crashed out of the race because they were trying too hard. And then you get to the end of the race where Keating Motorsports has a fuel flow issue, and they get disqualified from the win. So you're putting yourself in a position where you may be penalizing cars for going too fast or penalizing cars that have little minute issues with them. So I don't really want to see that in the top class. And I think many people who are going to be in the comments right now when I talk about hypercars will say, well, why not just do DPI if you're going to do BOP? They've proven that manufacturers want to be in that. It's pretty proven formula over in IMSA, and you can only imagine that more manufacturers would get involved if they could kind of cross-pollinate between IMSA and WEC with the same car. You would think that, but here we are where we've got 2 different regulations, it seems like almost 2 completely different goals, and this is going to be what it is going to be. I'm excited to see what the Aston looks and sounds like. Toyota did show off a prototype of their car today. It doesn't look great. I know a lot of people kind of crap on the look of the current LMP1 prototypes, but I don't know if this looks much better, folks. I have to tell you. So we'll just have to see how this all goes. Again, this is going to be a story that develops through the months. But as always, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And finally, this comes from Adam Stern. IndyCar is planning on stepping up their involvement in games and eSports as they've been relatively inactive in this section of marketing. And I have to tell you, okay, I'll give you some thumbs up, IndyCar, for acknowledging that this is where a weakness is. One of the things that I worry about, and I don't want to be misinterpreted because I say this a lot and people misinterpret me. I don't want them to fall for the eSports meme. Now, this is not hating on iRacing or hating on NASCAR Heat eSports or whatever. it's perfectly acceptable what that is, and if that generates revenue for the competitors, for the series, for the game developers, awesome. Good stuff. Like the entrepreneurship. That's cool. The problem here is that investing in an iRacing esports league, which I would bet dollars to donuts this is what it's going to be. I know virtually everyone, myself included, is saying, oh my God, I hope it's an IndyCar video game. I don't think it's going to be a standalone IndyCar video game, unfortunately. And doing an esports thing, even if it's with Forza Motorsport, which I know a lot of the iRacing people would definitely take that as a slight, and I wouldn't even really blame them on that one. It's not going to grow the sport, and maybe it's almost too late to jump on the gaming bandwagon, because something that has helped develop Formula One and even NASCAR with the younger crowd has been the fact that there has been a video game available that chronicles the series and it, is updated fairly regularly. That's how kids consume content these days. They don't necessarily play with toy cars anymore. It's all about the video gaming, and IndyCar has been so non-existent there. And iRacing, this is the thing about iRacing, is that it's for the hardcore fan. It's for the person who wants to experience racing at its most anal, to use a crass term. Any casual or any kid that picks up that game is A, probably not going to have a very good experience, and B, isn't going to experience IndyCar in a way that's going to educate them to actually become a fan, a lifelong fan. I've been playing the IndyCar 2005 game a lot recently, and even though it's a game from 15 years ago, and it was even out of date when it first came out because it's called IndyCar Series 2005, it was released in 2004, and it was based on the 2003 season. That game still contains, to this day, active drivers like Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, and Ed Carpenter. And I'm not saying this is the reason for that, but those three drivers are three of the most recognizable and well-known drivers that currently drive today. So, involvement in video games can really help a personal connection between consumers and the product. And I have to tell you, as somebody who bought the motocross game, the Monster Energy motocross game, and know nothing about motocross, outside of a very basic knowledge, after playing the game, I got a huge appreciation for the sport. And when I see it on NBC Sports now, I'll tune in. I'll check it out. And, I understand it a lot better than I used to. And this is the same thing with an IndyCar game. You can't really use the old excuse that used to be out there was, if we make a game and we invest in it, then it'll just sit in Walmart clearance bins. Well, gaming is virtually all digital these days. And you can release things on the Xbox Live Store or the PlayStation Network, and you never have to print any physical copies. So any kind of, excuse on that front, I think is not very good. And, again, the gaming trend thing seems to be going away a little bit. You even see it on YouTube. Gaming channels don't really grow anymore. So the chances of having an IndyCar version of Areva are pretty low, even if they released a game right now. But, having a gaming community around a sport is a good thing. I mean, look at the WTF1 people. They went out and hired one of the F1 gamers, and now they're kind of like the fastest growing F1 platform that seems to actually have their fingers on the pulse of what kind of the internet and younger people want to see out of racing. That's the kind of thing you get with a proper video game that builds a community, and that's something that IndyCar has not had. And again, I hope it's not. If it is an esports thing, that's fine. I hope it's not just an esports thing, because I think a video game is exactly what IndyCar needs to market itself to the next generation, and it's exactly the thing it doesn't have. And I mean a standalone video game, one with the proper tracks, the proper rules, the proper cars, the proper liveries, and one that encourages authentic but not super hardcore, an authentic but not super hardcore experience, a lot like the IndyCar 2005 game. I know it'd be asking a lot, and I know it would be a big investment, but that's what I think needs to happen. But we'll see what happens in the coming months. A lot of these stories I'm sure we'll be talking about later on. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.